بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to our fourth session of our class, Islamic Family Law. During the last three sessions, we spoke about the different mahrams, the three categories, and we explained who the mahrams are. The mahrams through blood relationships, mahram through marriage, and mahram through suckling, breastfeeding. Now that we understand who your mahram is, we will go on and continue to the next topic, and that is the laws of hijab. The laws of hijab, from whom a believing sister, a believing woman, must she cover her body from. Now this we understood in the last topic. If mahram, you don't have to cover. Na mahram, which we called ajnabi, she must cover. So now we'll speak about which body parts exactly does a believer, does a woman have to cover. Which body parts must be covered, which we call hijab. Inshallah. The laws of hijab. Now as you remember, brothers and sisters, we divided everyone into two. Every man in relation to a woman falls under one of two categories. Either he is mahram or he is ajnabi. So when we speak about the laws of sight, the laws of hijab, which areas does a woman have to cover, we have to begin by speaking about the ajnabi. So if a sister is around an ajnabi, shukran, thank you. If a Muslim woman is around a ajnabi, non-related, which body parts she has to cover? And then we'll go to part two, mahram. Which body parts must she cover from a mahram? And number three, the male believer, the Muslim brother, which body parts must he cover from sisters? We will begin with the laws of hijab. So which individuals we considered as ajnabi? Anyone that is not included in the three examples that we mentioned, blood relationships, through marriage and through breastfeeding, becomes an ajnabi. So which body parts does a Muslim woman have to cover? So when it comes to the ajnabi, she has to cover the entire body except the face and the hands up to the wrist. Everything else besides the face, and the face does not include the ears. The ears must be covered, because you see some sisters, they wear a form of hijab where the ears are exposed. No. The face, and the way that I am moving my fingers, excluding the neck, excluding the ears, and excluding the hairline. From the hairline to the bottom of the chin, and from right after the ear to the other corresponding part in the face, and the two hands up to the wrists. Anything beside that must be covered by Muslim woman. Now, what is the basis of this? Where does this argument come from? From the Quran. You see, there are certain individuals that claim hijab in the way that we're speaking about, that Muslim women have to cover their body, is not mentioned in the Quran. This is absolutely incorrect. There are a few verses in the Quran that speak about hijab. What are those verses? Verse number 1, you can see in front of you. وَقُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنَاتِ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah An-Nur, He gives some certain commandments and orders to believing men and to believing women. When He comes to the believing woman, He says, وَقُلْ يَا Rasulullah. Tell means give a command. This is wajib. وَقُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنَاتِ, what? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says a few things until He says this. وَلَا يُبْدِينَ زِينَتَهُنَّ إِلَّا مَا ظَهَرَ مِنْهَا. And let them not show their zeena. Let believing women not show their zeena except the apparent zeena. Zeena means beauty. So the Quran is basically saying that women cannot show their beauty except their apparent beauty. They're not allowed to show their beauty except their apparent beauty. Now, what does the Quran mean by beauty? There's so many tafasir, so many explanations from scholars. But when we come to the school of thought of Ahlul Bayt, we go back to the Imams themselves, they give us the understanding and the explanation of this verse. They tell us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this verse is considering the entire body of the woman as beauty. And then he says they have to cover their beauty, meaning their entire body, except إِلَّا مَا ظَهَرَ مِنْهَا, except the apparent beauty. So what is the apparent beauty? Based on this verse, there is an apparent beauty and there is a non-apparent beauty, right? So what is the apparent beauty? The verse itself doesn't make it clear. The Quran has certain verses that the Quran itself says they are mutashabihat. In Surah Al-Imran, the Holy Quran says, مِنْهُ آيَاتٌ مُحْكَمَاتٌ هُنَّ أُمُّ الْكِتَابِ وَأُخَرْ مُتَشَابِهَاتٌ. There are some clear, decisive verses in the Quran, and there are some allegorical, ambiguous verses in the Quran. When it comes to the ambiguous and allegorical verses, how do we understand the true meaning? We have to go back to Rasulullah and Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. They have the authority to do tafsir of the Quran. So this verse by itself is not very clear. Let women cover their beauty except their apparent beauty. It's not very clear. When we go back to the ahadith of Ahlul Bayt, they tell us that the entire body is beauty that has to be covered. The apparent beauty that doesn't have to be covered is the face and the hands, as I mentioned. Where is that mentioned? In the hadith you see in front of you. صحيحة الفضيل عن الصادق. الفضيل asked Imam al-Sadiq, هل الذراعان من الزينة? He asked Imam al-Sadiq about this verse where the Quran said, let them not show their zina. They can't show their zina. He asked Imam al-Sadiq, are the arms from the zina? The Imam said, قال نعم. Yes, that means the arms has to be covered. ما دون الخمار من الزينة وما دون السوارين من الزينة. The Imam gave him a general law. What is zina and what is not zina, meaning the apparent zina that doesn't have to be covered. The Imam said, ما دون الخمار. Khimar is basically the veil, the hijab that we put on the head covering. So besides the face is zina, siwarain is the wrist. And anything that is under or after the wrist is zina. So exclude the face, so the khimar, whatever is after it, right? This is considered as zina, and whatever is after the wrist is considered as zina. So this shows the entire body is zina. The only two places that the Imam made an exception is the hand up to the wrist and the face. So based on this verse, we understand that the entire body must be covered except the face and the hands. Now this is the first part of the verse that we understand. And then there's a continuation in the verse. And then Allah says, وَلْيَضْرِبْنَ بِخُمُرِهِنَّ عَلَى جُيُوبِهِنَّ. So the Quran says, let the believing woman take their khimar, which we said is the head covering, and let them cover their juyub with it. Juyub in the Arabic language means what? Means the chest, the bosom, exactly. This upper part of the chest is called the bosom. So the Quran says, take your head covering, O believing woman, and cover your chest with it. Now, I've seen certain individuals, they're not scholars, they have a blog on the internet, they claim to be scholars, and they say, the Quran doesn't say that they have to cover their hair for females. It says they have to cover their chest. And they bring this as proof. How do we reply to this? Because this is not right. This argument is not right. But how do we reply to it? We reply to it by saying that the Quran used the word khimar. They have to take their khimar and cover their chest with it. So use it as a khimar, cover your head, and also cover your chest. If the Quran wanted to say only cover your chest, why does the Quran say use a head covering to cover your chest? Use a piece of fabric to cover your chest. Why does the Quran say use a head covering to cover your chest when you don't have to cover your head? He used the word khimar. That means you're already using it as a khimar. You're covering the hair. You're not covering the neck. You're exposing it. The Quran says cover the neck or the chest also in addition. Is that clear? Yes, that it doesn't make sense to say that the Quran is just speaking about covering the chest when he used the word khimar. For example, I tell someone, use your shirt to cover your hands. And then he comes, he's covering his hands with gloves and he's exposing his chest. He says, you never said cover your chest, you said your hands. I told you shirt. Shirt means cover, it covers your entire chest, right? So the Quran said khimar. Use your khimar to cover the chest. That means you're already using it to cover the head because the word khimar means head covering. So the Quran is saying, in addition to covering your head, cover the chest. Now, as the sister said, why is the Quran speaking in this way? Why didn't the Quran just say cover the head and cover the chest? This goes back to the custom of the Arabs. The Arabs used to already wear a form of head covering, but it looked like a bandana. If you've seen a bandana, it covers the hair and the head, but it does not cover the chest. So the Quran says, good, you're already covering the hair. Use that khimar that you're covering the hair with to also cover the neck. And that's why it shows us that in order to correctly understand the Quran, to do tafsir Quran, we have to understand the context of the verse, why Allah revealed it, upon whom He revealed it, what was the custom of the Arabs. Only then we can understand the Quran in the right way. So now let's go to the second verse. The second verse in chapter 33, I believe Al-Ahzab, verse 59, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يا أيها النبي قل لأزواجك وبناتك ونساء المؤمنين يدنين عليهن من جلابيبهن. Ya Rasulullah, tell whom? Tell أزواجك, your wives, وبناتك, your daughters, ونساء المؤمنين, and all the believing women, to cast down their jalabib. Jalabib is the plural form of jilbab. Jilbab, when we go back to the dictionaries, they tell us that it was a overgarment that women used to wear. So in today's terms, it means abaya. The Quran uses the word abaya, but in the original Arabic word of abaya. So Allah is ordering Rasulullah to tell the believing woman to bring down their jilbab, their abaya, over their body. Now, there's a few points I have to clarify regarding this verse. Number one, there's some individuals I've seen, they claim that the hijab was only wajib upon the wives of Rasulullah. This verse clearly negates it because it says, tell your wives, your daughters, and all the believing women. Number two, there are some individuals that claim hijab is mustahab. This verse also negates that because remember, there's a command. Qul. Qul is a command. It's not something extra. No, it's not something recommended. It's something wajib. And finally, does this verse mean that women have to wear a abaya? I mean, abaya is part of the hijab? Scholars mention, no, what we understand from this verse isn't necessarily that women have to wear the abaya. What this verse means by jilbab is that the clothing that they wear has to be loose. You see, what's the point of the abaya? Abaya wasn't brought down from the heaven. There's nothing special about it. What makes it special is that it is loose. You cannot see the shape of the woman's body. So when the Quran uses jilbab, this is what scholars say. This is what the mufassirin say. The Quran is trying to say, let them wear clothing which is loose, that does not reveal the body of the lady. Because remember, the first verse we spoke about, it just says you have to cover your entire body except the hands and the face. But you can wear the tightest of clothing and you could still be following the verse. The Quran is saying I have to cover their entire body except the hands. I'm covering it, right? This second verse comes and says, in addition to covering, let it be jilbab, meaning let it be loose clothing. And that's why the second condition to hijab is that it has to be loose. Unfortunately, some sisters, she's covering the entire body, but she's wearing very tight jeans, for example, very tight clothing. This is unacceptable according to the Quran. So these two verses, they make it clear that hijab is wajib, that believing sisters, believing women have to cover the entire body. لا يبدين زينتهن. They cannot show their zina, meaning their body, except the apparent. And as Imam al-Sadiq said, the apparent part of the body is the hands and the face. Everything else must be covered. And then the second verse shows us that it has to be loose clothing. When it comes to prayer, only the first condition you have to meet, that you have to cover the body. But when it comes to the matters of hijab, because remember, it's about modesty, it's immodest for a sister to cover her body, but at the same time, it's very tight. What's the point? The point of hijab is so that it doesn't attract the eyes. So if she's wearing very tight jeans and you see that, unfortunately, in the communities, what's the point of this hijab? What's the point? I mean, sometimes you do something just because you have to. Sometimes there's a philosophy behind it. The point of hijab is so that men don't look, they're not attracted, so they don't, come and it's like you're inviting them with your clothing. So when the clothing is tight, then that defeats the purpose. But you have to make the judgment. You see, the Quran, the Hadith, many times they say general, they give general laws. You have to make the judgment based on the urf. The urf is mean what people understand. So when you say wear loose clothing, what do people understand? Anything that doesn't attract. That's why many scholars also say the clothing, the hijab that a woman wears should not be something that is, the color is very attractive. Some ladies, they wear the hijab, but the colors, you just want to look, and they're wearing crystals and all these things that make it even more attractive than probably not wearing any of that. So the point of hijab, remember, you have to be the judge, is that it does not attract, does not draw attention of males. That's right. So it goes back to culture. It goes back to culture, to al-urf. If in my urf, meaning in my city, wearing colors is not considered as attracting the opposite gender, that's fine. But maybe in some more conservative societies, no, anything besides black, oh, she's trying to deliver a message. She's trying to send a message. She's trying to bring attention. So of course it depends on the urf, because the point of hijab is modesty, of course. So as long as loose clothing, as long as the entire body excluding the face and the hands are covered, you have to be the judge whether this attracts or not, and that can differ from place to place. Yeah. Unfortunately, one concept that I've been seeing in the past few years, the concept of fashion hijab, how to make your hijab look good. This is completely counterintuitive. I mean, this is going against the idea of hijab. Fashion hijab means I look good, I draw attention. The hijab means don't draw attention. So if the point of your hijab is to make you look good, that's the exact opposite point of hijab. So that's why we have to be careful of fashion hijab. Yes, sister.
No, I disagree. Look good, it's in the way tertib. That means like when you even for anything.
Yes, tertib, I understand. Being neat.
Being neat.
Being neat is fine.
No, this to match is a good thing. It's not a bad
Yes,
thing.
but there is a difference between that and the fashion hijab that you were seeing. Just go Google fashion hijab and you'll see the new styles and exactly. So you can tell that the point of these fashion hijabs is to attract attention. Oh, I have the latest fashion and style of the hijab. Why are you doing that? You want people to see. Would you wear this hijab if there was no one looking at you? Obviously not. So you have to be the judge. Remember, I say again and again and again, the human being, Allah has given himself the power and the ability to judge himself. The Quran says this, بَلِ الْإِنسَانُ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ بَصِيرًا. We know if we're doing right, if we're giving excuses. وَلَوْ أَلْقَى مَعَاذِيرًا. Even though I justify, I give excuses, but I know deep down, this is not a valid excuse. So I have to be the judge. My personal opinion is that most of this fashion hijab is unacceptable. Yes, if it's just to be neat, of course, you don't want to come out and look terrible. That's fine, but that's not what they mean by fashion hijab. And if you just look, you'll see what I mean. So now that we understand this first law, that when it comes to a ajnabi, a sister, a believing woman has to cover the entire body except the hands and the face, and it has to be loose clothing. Let's go to the next slide. There are some exceptions to the law of hijab. And I'll mention for you 3 exceptions. The first exception is this. Number 1, when a man wants to marry a woman, he is allowed to see that potential wife of his, potential, without hijab. Now, the ahadith tell us he can see her mahasin. This is exactly what the hadith says. He can see her mahasin. Now, what is mahasin? Mahasin, according to the Arabic language, and according to scholars, mahasin is what? Is the hair and the neck. So basically the head covering. She can remove the head covering, he can take a look, and then he can decide, you know what, I want to marry, you know what, I don't want to marry. Now, what is the basis of this? The basis of this is the hadith, many ahadith, but I'll mention one of them. A hadith from Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. Sahihat Ghiyath ibn Ibrahim في رجل ينظر إلى محاسن امرأة يريد أن يتزوجها. Imam Ali was asked, can someone see the mahasin, meaning the hair and the neck of a woman that he wants to marry? Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam said yes. Now, scholars say that if in order for it to be halal, you truly have to consider marrying her. Some people, let me just see 50 girls without hijab and then I'll choose. No, 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 no. If you've narrowed down the list, it's either Fatima or Zainab, let's say, but I don't know about the looks. Maybe the looks is gonna be the tipping, it's gonna tip the scale. Then you can look. You can't just go out and look, and if you liked someone, you'll marry her. No, 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 no. It has to be a serious consideration that I'm really looking into marrying this girl, but I want to see her without hijab. I want to look at her real looks. Can I do that? You're allowed to do it. So we can't play games with this. You know what? I use this as an excuse to just go and see 20, 30 women. No, no, no. Narrow down the list and then you can do it. Yes, sister.
Is there a condition that her dad should be there?
No. No, it's not a Islamically, legally, it's not a condition, but probably I would say morally, ethically, it would probably be a condition that not necessarily her dad, her mom, anyone. Yeah, her parents, someone, her uncle, her grandfather, whoever. And probably the less time he spends, the better. It doesn't have to be physically, it could be a picture that he sees that could also work. Yeah, a picture could also work. That's okay, as long as it's just the hair and the neck, nothing beyond that. So this is the first exception to the laws of hijab. Exception number 2. The second exception is old woman. Old woman that will no longer get married. But why will they no longer get married? Due to their old age. For example, this old lady is a widow. This old lady is divorced. Or even if she is married, but she's at an age where nobody's going to marry her anymore. She doesn't even think about marriage. So for example, 50 years old, no, there's still prospects of marriage, even though it's less than an average woman, younger woman, but there is. 60 years of age, in our communities, no, never?
No, should be older than.
Should be older. So I would say probably like senior citizen, at least 65, 70. When a lady is an old lady, she would never think about marriage. Nobody even would think that she's going to get married. When she reaches that age, she can show her hair and she can show even her arms. So she has to wear hijab, but the hijab could be kind of, let's say, messy. The hair is showing, maybe even the neck is showing, the arms are showing, that's fine. Where does this ruling come from? The Quran. The Quran says this, where? Verse in front of you. وَالْقَوَاعِدُ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ اللَّاتِي لَا يَرْجُونَ نِكَاحًا. Meaning the old ladies that don't want to get married, that don't hope to get married. They know they'll never get married. فليس عليهن جناح أن يضعن ثيابهن غير متبرجات بزينة. They may put off their clothes without showing their ornaments. That means they can't wear jewelry and makeup and so on and so forth. So they can show parts of their body. The hadith tell us not the entire body, of course, meaning the hair, the neck, and the arms. And this is acceptable. Now, is it a good thing? No, it's much better to wear the full hijab. But however, if it's difficult for them, that's fine. If a part of their hair is showing, they can wear just a veil that doesn't conceal the entire parts of the hair, that's fine. Some parts of the arm are showing, that's fine. That's acceptable. This is exception number 2. Exception number 3, medical purposes if there is a necessity. Now, before I mention this, there are many individuals, listen carefully, that believe that a doctor is a mahram. Remember we said the 3 mahrams? Number 1, blood relationship, your father, brother. Number 2, your husband, your father-in-law. Number 3, the family through suckling and breastfeeding. Some individuals, and I think this is most people, they have a 4th category of mahram, doctors. That's why females, as soon as they go to doctors, they expose their entire body. Yeah, it's a doctor. Even if you tell them, where's your hijab? This is a doctor. It's as if they're implying he's a mahram. So what if he's a doctor? A doctor, if he's not your brother, your father, your husband, your father-in-law, through radha', through suckling, he's still an ajnabi. Remember, everyone, it's either mahram or he's ajnabi. A doctor, if he does not fall under one of those three, the title of being a doctor does not give him authority to see you. It does not give me, the female, authority to expose any part of my body except the face and the hands. However, only it becomes an exception only if it's a necessity. If there is no female doctor to treat me, I have to show my hands, even my hands, my arm. I have to show my back, my chest, my legs, anywhere that must be covered. If there is no female doctors, I can't access them. Only then I may go to male doctors. So if there is a female doctor available, it is haram, brothers and sisters, for a Muslim woman to go to a male doctor where she is forced to show a part of the body that she's not allowed to. Go to the female. There's so many females. Yes, if there wasn't a female, then she's allowed. Unfortunately, most individuals with this law, they are very, very lenient and careless and reckless. Even, religious ladies, religious women, they think that a doctor is a mahram. Right away, go and expose. No, it should be a last resort. When I don't find any other solution, fine. There's one other exception mentioned in the hadith, and that is if there is a female doctor, but this is, for example, a surgery, and I don't trust that female doctor. She's not very, very smart. She's not very, very intelligent, not a good doctor. The male doctor is much better. In this situation, fine. This is mentioned in the hadith. But for example, I have a cold, I have the flu, I broke my hands. There is no necessity in going to seeing a male doctor. In fact, if I'm a female, I don't think it makes sense for my primary care doctor to be a male. Should be a female. If there is those necessities, life and death situations, go and see a male. And another point, brothers and sisters, I don't even think I have to mention this, but because it's become such a pervasive habit or pervasive phenomenon in societies, then you have to mention this. That when it comes to, the OB/GYN doctors, you see some certain Muslim woman, her OB/GYN doctor is a male. Allahu Akbar. This is the biggest type of haram. When there are females that practice this field of medicine, what gives me the right and the authority to go to this man? Unless it's a life and death. Yes, I went to the hospital, there was no female, I couldn't do anything. Or the female doctor, I think she's not that good. The male doctor, fine. Life and death situation, everything becomes halal. Drinking alcohol becomes halal if I'm dying and there's nothing to drink. Besides it, we're speaking about normal situations. It is haram for a Muslim female to go to a male doctor when there's female doctors in the society. Alhamdulillah, here in the US, you have so many female doctors. Yes, I've seen parts of the Middle East where they have a shortage of female doctors. Maybe in those situations, it would be acceptable, but not here in America, not in the Western countries. Most of the time, you have an abundance of doctors, especially OB/GYN. I personally think males should not even go and pursue this career of being an OB/GYN doctor. Unless there was a shortage and, saving women's lives depended on it, which I don't think is true in most societies, why would I even pursue that career? There's so many careers in medicine I could not pursue except OB/GYN. So this is something that we have to understand. Medical necessities is an exception only if it is a true necessity. And I'll get to this. Touching is also haram between people that aren't mahrams. But if there is a covering, it becomes okay. But they say as long as you just touch, it doesn't require any, pressing or any firm grabbing, because this becomes a little inappropriate. Remember, hijab is about modesty. So you have to be the judge. And this situation, I think it would be one of those gray areas. I can't say necessarily it's haram because he's not seeing your skin, he's not touching your skin, but he is pressing, and he's also pressing for medical reasons. I don't think this would be haram. I doubt it. But I would say, is it better? Yes. It's always better to stay away from those gray areas where it's not so clear. I can't say it's haram for sure, but it probably would be better to stay away from that. If I can see a female doctor, much easier, much better. She can touch anything, see anything. Why go in? Unless this doctor is just so much better than all the other female doctors, that makes it worth it for me to go to. Remember, we said if it becomes a matter of necessity, ضرورة, that's fine. But if there is a female doctor, then I will have to answer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because remember, Allah is going to ask you, was this doctor mahram? There was no verse in the Quran that said doctor is mahram. So you have to have an explanation why you uncovered in front of a male stranger. You tell Allah because he was a doctor. So what? Where in the Quran did I say doctor is okay? If it's a matter of necessity, life and death, okay, that's fine. This is the aql tells you that's okay. But if there's down the road, there's a female doctor and you come to the male, what's your justification for that in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? You have to have an answer in front of Allah. Allah will answer me. He'll try me on the day of judgment. He'll ask me about every single action that I did. Yes. So what's the basis of this hukum? There's a hadith from Abu Hamza al-Thamali. We have the dua of Abu Hamza in Ramadan. He was also a scholar. We just think he was a narrator that memorized the hadith of Imam Zayn al-Abidin. No, he was also a scholar in fiqh and halal and haram. So he says, I heard Imam al-Baqir, or he says, I asked Imam al-Baqir, سألته عن المرأة المسلمة يصيبها البلاء في جسدها إما كسر وإما جرح في مكان لا يصلح النظر إليه يكون الرجل أرفق بعلاجه من النساء أيصلح له النظر إليها؟ قال إذا اضطرت إليه فليعالجها إن شاءت. The Imam was asked, if a Muslim woman has a medical condition in a part of her body that she must cover, meaning not the face, not the hands, in her arms, in her shoulder, in her chest, in her legs, anywhere in her body, and she needs treatment. And what we understand from the question is that there is a female doctor and there's a male doctor. But the Abu Hamza says, but the male doctor arfaq, he's better, he's smarter, he takes care much better than the woman. Is she allowed or not to go to the male doctor? The Imam says yes, إذا اضطرت, if there's a necessity, then she can do it. She can uncover and the doctor can see. So this is the basis of this hadith. What about a Muslim doctor? Are they allowed to touch patients of opposite gender if it involves pressing? Same thing, it doesn't matter. If it's haram for me to allow him, it's haram for him. So when we say it is haram for a Muslim sister to expose, it's haram for the male to look. So it's two ways. So obviously the same thing would apply to the Muslim doctor as well. So a few rulings. I'll mention 3 rulings related to what we mentioned, to hijab. Number 1, we mentioned that it's haram to see the body of the lady except the face and the hands. When we say it's haram to see, it's haram to touch. So seeing and touching, they are hand in hand. Now what's the justification for this? Number 1, it doesn't make sense for Allah to say, oh, believing woman, you have to cover your body, but men can touch your body, right? Because touching is more intimate, it should be more haram. First it's looking and then touching. So even though there isn't a direct verse, clear verse that says touching the opposite gender is haram, why didn't Allah mention it? Because it's obvious. Allah said you can't look but at the face and the hands. So you can touch. So touching is haram. So a woman can a woman can show her face and she can show her hands. But can she, with her hands, touch another man? Because I can see her hands. Can I touch it or not? Now, obviously, her arms, I can't touch it because I can't see it. But what about the hands? So, for example, shaking hands. Can I shake hands with a Muslim sister or not? Now, this isn't very clear from the Quran. The Quran says you can't see except the hands. So the hands I can see. So one would say maybe I can touch also. Shaking hands is haram. Why? We have a hadith from the Imams. And you can see one hadith here. صحيحة سماعة ابن مهران سألت الصادق عن مصافحة الرجل المرأة. Can a man and a woman that are unrelated shake hands? The Imam said قال المرأة التي يحل له أن يتزوجها فلا يصافحها إلا من وراء الثوب. The Imam said if you're allowed to marry her, then you're not allowed to shake her hands. Remember, any person that you're not related to, you can marry her. But if you can marry her, that means it's your mother, it's your sister, it's your aunt, you can shake hands. So if you cannot marry her, meaning she is not mahram to you, then you're not allowed, the Imam said, to shake her hands. إِلَّا مِنْ وَرَاءِ الثَّوْبِ. Now you can if you are covering the skin with something, with clothing. So you're wearing gloves, you put a piece of fabric, that's fine. And there is even a hadith where the Imam says, and when you do it, if you had to, don't press firmly like we spoke about. Just do it very, very, softly. Because remember, you want to try to do the minimum, the least that you can. So this is number one. Number two, the second mas'ala, the second ruling that relates to hijab, these laws that we're speaking about only apply to adults. They don't apply to children. So what do we mean? Two examples I have. Number one, we said a woman has to cover her body in front of men. Does that include boys? No. So can she show her hair? Can she show her body in front of a 5-year-old boy? Yes. As long as the child is not mumayyiz. The ulama have a word that they mean mumayyiz. What is mumayyiz? I'll get to that. Now, what's the basis of this verse? The Quran itself made an exception. In the verse where Allah says, وَلَا يُبْدِينَ زِينَتَهُنَّ إِلَّا. They cannot show their body. Remember zina, we said the entire body is zina, except for لِبُعُولَتِهِنَّ, except for their husbands and their fathers, and until the Quran said, أَوَ الطِّفْلِ الَّذِينَ لَمْ يَظْهَرُوا عَلَىٰ عَوْرَاتِ النِّسَاءِ. Allah said, and the children. They don't have to cover from the children, but what children? Not all children. الَّذِينَ لَمْ يَظْهَرُوا عَلَىٰ عَوْرَاتِ النِّسَاءِ. The children that haven't reached an age where they can understand the difference between male and woman. They can understand these things, right? So a 5-year-old doesn't understand when he sees a woman without hijab, nothing's going to happen. But a 10-year-old kid, even though he's a kid, but no, a 10-year-old kid understands. He may even have desires, right? الَّذِينَ لَمْ يَظْهَرُوا عَلَىٰ عَوْرَاتِ النِّسَاءِ. I mean, they don't understand the sexual part of life. If they don't understand that, that's fine. This is what the ulama call mumayyiz, because we have baligh, we have mumayyiz. Some kids, they only become baligh, mature adults, until they're 15. But even when he's 13, 14, he's a man. He has all the desires of a man. He understands everything. So it doesn't make sense for a woman not to wear hijab in front of him. So as long as he is mumayyiz, I would say mumayyiz differs depending on the aql, the intellect of each young individual. But usually about the age of 8, 9, 10, anywhere in there, child becomes mumayyiz. The boy becomes mumayyiz. Here, the woman has to cover. So I see a 10, 11-year-old boy, I have to cover from him. Some people think, as long as he's not baligh and girl, no, I don't have to cover. If he is mumayyiz according to the Quran, then the laws of hijab apply. So this is with the boys. What about with girls? We said women have to cover. The girls have to cover. Do they have to wear hijab? They don't. Until they become baligh, according to most ulama, is when they turn 9 years old. This is when they start having to wear hijab. Why? Because the verse, when they says, وَقُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنَاتِ, is speaking about adults. All the commandments of the Quran, they are directed towards adults. They don't include kids. Pray, fast. That's why they say kids, they're excluded from all of this. Now, does that mean they shouldn't do this? No, they could do it. It's good, but it's not wajib, of course. There's a hadith from the Imam where he says, رُفِعَ الْقَلَمْ عَنِ الصَّبِي حَتَّى يَبْلُغ. The literal meaning of this hadith is that the pen has been lifted from the child until he becomes baligh, he becomes mature. What does that mean? That means we won't write anything against him. He's a kid, he can go have fun, do whatever he wants. Once he becomes baligh, no, now there will be accountability. So this is the second ruling. And finally, the third ruling, and we will end inshallah, is this. According to the Quran, all types of zeena and ornaments must be covered. See some sisters wearing the full hijab, but they're wearing makeup. Makeup is a zeena. What is zeena? Zeena is anything that beautifies you, beauty. Makeup makes us more beautiful. It's a form of ornament. So makeup in front of men is haram according to the Quran, because the Quran clearly says, وَلَا يُبْدِينَ زِينَتَهُنَّ. Do not show your zeena, your ornaments, jewelry. Wearing jewelry in the public in front of men is haram because this is zeena. However, there are a few exceptions that the Imams mentioned. Like what? Kuhul. Kuhul, which is the eyeliner, right? The eyeliner. Why is this okay? Even though it's zina, the Imam said. The Imam said this goes under إِلَّا مَا ظَهَرَ مِنْهَا. Remember, there's apparent and there's a hidden zina. Hidden zina, you have to hide it, which is the entire body except the hands and the face. The Imam said kuhul is part of the apparent zina, which you don't have to cover. So this is there's a hadith that explicitly mentions this. Ring. Remember, all jewelry is haram to show in front of men. Ring is okay because the hadith mentioned, and even bracelet. As long as beyond the wrist is not showing, but over that, remember that sleeve, for example, that sisters wear. So wearing a bracelet over that is halal. But however, scholars mention all of these are halal, these exceptions, kuhul, the eyeliner, the ring, the bracelet, as long as the intention isn't to attract men. Some they wear it to attract men. If that isn't the intention, it becomes haram, of course. Now, why am I wearing it? Because it's a habit. I wear it every day. I'm not wearing it to look nicer. It's a habit. For example, I have certain relatives, female relatives, every day of their lives, they'll wear the bracelet or a necklace. You know, sometimes you find even your grandmother, she's wearing a necklace for years. She never took it off. This isn't for zeena to attract. It just becomes a habit. So this is okay. Now, what about a wig? Some people, they say, instead of wearing a hijab, can I wear a wig and go out? No. Why? Because a wig is usually considered as a form of zeena, right? I mean, you're not going to wear a wig to look worse. You're going to wear it to look better. So if it is considered as a zeena, if the wig that I'm wearing is a form of zeena, then it becomes haram to wear the wig. Why? Because it goes under the verse, وَلَا يُبْدِينَ زِينَتَهُنَّ. Not allowed to show the zeena. Is there any questions? If not, I will end, inshallah. No questions? Inshallah, we shall end. Thank you so much, brothers and sisters. Inshallah, we shall see you next week. هذا وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين صلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين.